So imagine for a second that your computer has this really nasty virus. I mean, the operating system is crashing constantly, files are just completely corrupting, the whole thing is a total mess.
Right, like a complete digital meltdown.
Exactly. Now, imagine trying to fix that virus by taking a microfiber cloth and furiously scrubbing the physical glass of your monitor. Or maybe, taking a tiny hammer and tapping on the keyboard to somehow knock the virus loose.
I mean, that sounds completely absurd.
Right. It's ridiculous.
Hmm.
You obviously can't fix a software problem by, manipulating the hardware. Yet, according to the deeply provocative essay we are jumping into today, this is exactly how we humans approach our own limitations. We are constantly trying to wipe the monitor, and we are entirely ignoring the code.
It is a phenomenal analogy for what we're tackling today in this deep dive.
Yeah, it really sets the stage.
It does. We are looking at a text called Move the Earth. It was written by Shua Feng and translated and edited by Ji Jing. And our mission for you, the listener, is to completely dismantle your working definition of the word impossible.
Oh, yeah. We are tearing it all down today.
We really are. We're going to look at why relying on physical solutions for universal problems is essentially a dead end, and how shifting your consciousness might actually dictate reality itself.
And just to, set the ground rules right off the bat for this deep dive, this is not a mechanical engineering paper.
Definitely not.
No, if you are tuning in looking for orbital mechanics or planetary physics, you are in the wrong place. This is a radical philosophical exploration that really demands we question our absolute faith in the physical material world. It's like, okay, let's unpack this. It's like taking off a pair of glasses you've worn your entire life and suddenly realizing you were only seeing 1% of the actual color spectrum.
Which is, frankly, incredibly uncomfortable for modern thinkers.
Oh, totally.
I mean, we are so trained to trust what we can measure, right? What we can touch, what we can prove with a mathematical equation. And the text immediately attacks that comfort zone by going right after one of the most revered statements in the history of science. I'm talking about Archimedes and his famous lever.
Right, the classic, give me a lever and a fulcrum and I can move the earth. I mean, it is the ultimate flex of physical mechanics.
It really is.
We've used it for centuries as the gold standard for human ingenuity. Just give us the right physical tool and we can conquer the universe. But the author of this text looks at that quote and basically says, yeah, this is complete nonsense.
Because it operates under this illusion that hypothetical physical scaling is the exact same thing as actual power.
Right.
What's fascinating here is how the author points out the staggering logical flaws in the statement itself. Yes, the math of leverage works on a piece of paper in a classroom, but the reality of it is an absolute absurdity.
The text actually draws this really sharp comparison here that I loved. It says asking for a lever long enough to move the Earth is just as useless as saying, give me a spacecraft that can travel 1 billion times faster than light and I can reach the 10,000-year world.
Yeah, it's a completely empty hypothetical.
Exactly. It's like someone saying, hey, if I had a magic wand, I could do magic. Well, sure, buddy, but you don't have a wand. And magic wands don't exist in our physical realm. So what exactly is the point of saying that? It doesn't actually solve the problem in front of you.
And that brings us to a major paradigm shift in the text, which is the redefinition of the true sage.
Oh, this part was so good.
Right. We usually think of a genius as the person who brilliantly uses the tools they are handed. But the author argues that the true sage isn't the person who uses the impossible lever or the guy who hitches a ride on the magical spacecraft.
The sage is the one who actually finds the fulcrum or builds the spacecraft in the first place.
Precisely. The text is making this huge demand for absolute agency and creation. If you're just sitting around waiting for the universe to hand you a physical lever that literally violates the laws of physics, you are going to be waiting forever.
Yeah, you're stuck.
The sage doesn't rely on impossible physical tools. The sage creates an entirely new condition where the impossible isn't just possible, it's inevitable.
Which completely flips the burden of proof, if you think about it. It means we can't just throw up our hands and blame the physical universe for our limitations.
We have to blame ourselves.
Exactly. We have to blame our own lack of ingenuity. If physical mechanics are a dead end for true universal creation, we have to look at what actually drives progress. And the text argues that progress is driven by a framework called the unconventional thinking theory of Lifechanyuan.
And this theory is really the philosophical bedrock of the entire essay. The core tenet is uncompromising. It states that there is no absolute impossibility in the world.
None at all.
Right. There are only people who fail to consider all possibilities.
And, when you first read that, the quote is, "There is nothing that cannot be done." It honestly sounds like something you'd read on a cheesy motivational poster in a corporate break room.
Yeah, it sounds a bit naive at first glance.
It does. But then the author backs it up with this historical reality check that is genuinely hard to argue with. They bring up global communication.
Right. The ability to just see and speak to someone thousands of miles away instantaneously from the comfort of your living room.
Think about that from the perspective of, say, a scientist living in the year 1600.
Mm.
If you tried to explain a smartphone video call to them, they wouldn't just be confused.
No, they'd think you were crazy.
They would tell you definitively that it is impossible. They would say it literally violates the absolute laws of physical reality.
Yeah.
Because to them, a voice is just a physical vibration in the air.
Right.
The idea of translating that vibration into an invisible wave, shooting it up to space, and bouncing it back down to a piece of illuminated glass on the other side of the planet, that is absolute magic. But to us, it's just a Tuesday.
Which perfectly illustrates the text's point. The barrier to instant global communication was never a physical law of the universe. I mean, the universe always had the capacity for electromagnetism and radio waves.
They were always there.
Always. The barrier was entirely in the human mind. It was the limit of what we could imagine at the time. So the text uses this to argue that once the mind can truly conceive of a mechanism, the physical reality is dragged along right behind it. The physical world is just a lagging indicator of our consciousness.
Okay, and I totally track with that when it comes to technology. Like, human imagination leads to new physics, which leads to new tools.
Sure.
But the text doesn't stop at smartphones.
No, it goes much further.
It drives this logic straight into biology, and this is where I really start to bump up against the claims.
Well, it's the most provocative section of the essay, without a doubt.
Because it just starts firing off these massive, heavy questions like, can humans live for 10,000 years? Can we live forever? Can all terminal illnesses be cured? Can people live in the Elysium world? And the text answers all of these with a definitive yes. It claims these aren't just fun hypotheticals, they are absolute certainties that the Lifechanyuan theories have already addressed.
So, to understand how the author justifies a claim that massive, we have to look at how they redefine the very concept of life. The text actually spells life with all capital letters.
Right, L-I-F-E.
Exactly. And it defines it not as a biological machine made of, cells and proteins and DNA, but as a non-material structure with spirituality. Eternal life is simply keeping this structure unchanged.
So we are back to the software analogy from the intro.
Yes.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me. It's like treating human life not as physical hardware that degrades over time, but as software code. And if you perfect the code, the program literally never crashes.
That's the idea. And from that premise, achieving eternal life or curing a terminal disease is no longer a medical problem. It's suddenly a structural engineering problem. The text argues that a terminal illness is not this unconquerable physical invader. A tumor or a failing organ is merely an, quote, external manifestation of an imperfect internal spiritual structure.
Okay, I have to hit pause right here and just push back a little. Because it's an elegant metaphor, right? Treating the body like an avatar that just responds to source code. But applying this to terminal illness feels, incredibly dismissive of the brutal physical reality of disease.
I can see why you'd say that.
I mean, is the author seriously arguing that a genetic mutation or a virus that we can literally look at under an electron microscope is just a failure of the mind? How does a person practically, debug their spiritual software to cure a physical disease?
It's a really vital critique, and you're right to challenge it because it definitely sounds like we're dangerously close to that toxic positivity space of, just think positive and your broken leg will heal magically.
Yeah. Right, which we know isn't true.
But the text is arguing something significantly deeper than just positive thinking. It is asserting a rigid causal hierarchy. So in conventional science, we believe causality flows upward, right? Atoms form cells. Cells form bodies. Bodies generate consciousness in the brain.
Yeah, and if the cells break, the consciousness ends. The hardware dictates the software.
Yes, exactly. But this unconventional thinking reverses the flow of causality entirely. It claims that the non-material structure, the consciousness, is the foundational reality. The physical body is just the shadow passed by that structure.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So debugging the software isn't about just wishing a disease away. It's about fundamentally altering your structural frequency, perfecting that non-material structure. By perfecting the structure, illnesses vanish without a trace because the physical shadow cannot possibly manifest a flaw if the source is flawless.
Okay, so the physical disease is literally just a glitch on the monitor.
Yeah.
You rewrite the actual program, the monitor clears up automatically.
Exactly.
It's a fascinating way to view existence, I'll admit, even if it completely shatters modern biology. Though there is a very funny, highly specific caveat the author throws in right after making these massive, universe-altering claims.
Oh, you mean regarding the Elysium world?
Yes. Oh my gosh. The text asks, can people live in the Elysium world?
Yeah.
Which, from the context, is this ultimate state of perfection and joy. And the text says, it's as easy as flipping your hand. But then in these cheeky little parentheses, the author adds, sorry, the secrets are only for Chanyuan celestials.
It's quite a sudden left turn in the tone.
I honestly laughed out loud when I read it. It's like the author saying, oh, immortality, curing all known diseases, super easy, barely an inconvenience. But you're not in the VIP club, so I can't actually tell you how.
It certainly injects a layer of exclusivity and mystique into the philosophy, doesn't it?
It really does.
It suggests that this isn't just a mental shift anyone can do on their own on a random Tuesday. It requires a specific initiation or alignment with this specific group. But even with that gatekeeping, the broader takeaway, the underlying philosophical principle the text is pushing, remains totally intact. And that principle is, consciousness creates reality. The text literally says, illness arises from the mind and the environment is shaped by the mind.
And if we're going to actually accept that consciousness creates reality, we have to fundamentally break our addiction to physical measurement. Because right now, for most of us, our entire reality is defined by what we can measure with a tool.
Which brings us right back to the absolute absurdity of Archimedes and his lever. To truly dismantle our faith in physical mechanics, the text playfully explores the actual logistics of moving the Earth. It basically says, okay, Archimedes, let's play your game. Let's use Mars as the fulcrum, and we'll stand all the way over on Pluto to pry the Earth up.
Which is such a great, ridiculous visual.
Right. But then it asks the obvious logistical questions. Where exactly does this lever come from?
Yeah, where do you buy that?
Exactly. What material is it possibly made of that wouldn't just snap immediately across the solar system? Who is this giant standing on Pluto? And who possesses the physical strength to actually push that lever down?
It's brilliantly pointing out that we are constantly trying to solve universal-scale problems with human-scale mechanical thinking. And to really drive this home, the text goes after our specific units of measurement. It asks us to compare the distance between an atomic nucleus and an electron to the massive distance between Earth and Pluto.
Highlighting the extremes of the micro and the macro.
Right. And it says that trying to measure micrometers and nanometers with an inch is like, quote, using an atomic bomb to kill a mosquito.
It's completely inappropriate for the scale.
And on the other end of the spectrum, trying to measure light years with a yardstick is like using grains of sand to measure the Milky Way. It literally asks the reader, so which is longer, the inch or the yard?
And the brilliant answer the text leads you to is neither. Both the inch and the yard are entirely meaningless concepts when you step outside our very narrow human-sized band of reality.
Which is the core realization you and I and everyone listening are supposed to have right now. If our physical tools, our levers, our yardsticks, our entire concept of mechanical physics are this laughably inadequate the second we zoom in on a single atom or zoom out to a galaxy, why on earth do we trust them to define the absolute limits of our potential?
We shouldn't.
Right. Why do we let a literal yardstick tell us what is impossible?
It's a profound unmooring from the material world. If we accept that physical force and physical measurement are just local illusions, a trick of our scale, what replaces them? The text answers this by pointing toward the mastery of subtle forces over brute strength. It shows how true power rarely looks like what we expect.
Oh, it brings up that old saying, right, about the single straw that breaks the camel's back.
Exactly. It isn't the physical weight of that one straw that does the breaking. It's the precise placement and timing within a system that is already under immense tension. It also points to the Taiji master, who uses 4 ounces to move 1,000 pounds.
So deflecting momentum rather than trying to oppose it with equal physical force.
Yes, and the text gets incredibly poetic here. It says the most exquisite swordsmanship has no sword.
Wow.
The best cultivation is the act of not cultivating. The most refined mystical arts have no physical form whatsoever. It's presenting this beautiful paradox. The mightiest force is actually the weakest, softest, least tangible thing.
It's almost counterintuitive, but it makes so much sense when you frame it like that.
The author even quotes the ancient philosopher Laozi to cement this idea. Laozi observed that great perfection seems flawed, yet its use is boundless. He said that those skilled in closing shut without bolts yet cannot be opened. Those skilled in tying bind without ropes yet cannot be untied.
That is wild.
It is. Because this isn't about being better at physical mechanics. It is about transcending the mechanism entirely. Think about it. If you bind someone without a rope, they can never cut the rope to escape.
Because there's nothing physical to fight against. So if we completely let go of our yardsticks and our levers and our ropes, where do we actually end up? The text says this liberation leads to an ultimate state of being called holographic thinking.
And this is really the peak of the unconventional thinking the author has been building toward this whole time.
And what I absolutely love about the description of holographic thinking in this essay is that it isn't portrayed as some solemn, serious, monk-like existence where you just stare at a wall. The text explicitly says this way of thinking is for entertainment.
Yes.
It is indescribably joyful, it's boundless, and it is completely unrestricted. It says you can, quote, play however you like. The imagery is just wild sweeping the entire Milky Way into an iron dustpan with a broom, or traveling 100,000 light years in the blink of an eye. The author actually writes, it's so much fun.
It's the joy of a mind that has finally realized the physical world is a playground, not a prison cell. And to give us a framework for this, the author rapidly references a series of mythological and historical figures who embodied this boundless state.
Oh yeah, we get a whole list here. We get Sun Wukong, the Monkey King from Chinese mythology, who travels 108,000 miles on a single somersault cloud like it's absolutely nothing. We get the earth-traveling sun walking through solid earth and rock as easily as a shark swimming through water.
And philosophical figures, too.
Right, we see Laozi sighing over the ancient masters of the Tao who were deep beyond comprehension, and Buddha Shakyamuni teaching his disciples to let the mind arise without abiding anywhere. And there's also praise for Laozi's teacher, Huzi.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's important to realize that the text isn't citing these figures to say, hey, look at these cool physical magic tricks.
That's right, they aren't illusionists.
Exactly. It's using them as archetypes of holographic thinking. The Monkey King doesn't need a faster-than-light spacecraft. His consciousness dictates his location. These ancient masters weren't performing physical feats. They were exhibiting absolute mastery over that internal, non-material structure we talked about earlier. Holographic thinking is the ultimate freedom from the literal.
You know, it reminds me of playing a video game.
Oh, how so?
Okay, so imagine you've been playing this massive role-playing game for years. You think you are just a standard character. You walk through the maze, you bump into physical walls, you take damage, you painstakingly follow all the rules of the game's physics engine. You are utterly convinced the maze is the absolute reality.
Sure, you're bound by the rules of the game.
Right. But then, somebody hands you the developer codes. Suddenly, you realize you don't actually have to navigate the maze. You don't need to find a digital crowbar to break down a digital door. You just go into the code, change your character's collision parameters to 0, and you just walk right through the solid wall.
That's a brilliant way to put it.
The game itself hasn't changed, but your relationship to its limitations has fundamentally shifted because you finally have access to the source code.
That is exactly what holographic thinking is. It is realizing that you have the developer codes to reality. And once you have that realization, the idea of searching for a giant physical lever to move a physical Earth seems completely absurd.
Yeah, it's totally pointless.
You've outgrown the need for the lever. You've outgrown the maze entirely.
So as we bring this deep dive in for a landing today, let's look at what this actually means for you, the listener. Because Move the Earth is clearly not a construction manual. It is a profound, aggressive challenge to your daily operating system. It teaches us that moving the Earth isn't a physical project. It's a metaphor for rejecting absolute impossibilities.
The true fulcrum of the universe isn't a point in physical space.
No, the true fulcrum is the human mind. And our limitations are so often just, as the text puts it, things beyond the reach of one's thinking.
It forces us to recognize that our perceived limitations, whether they are technological, biological, or spatial, are rarely absolute laws of nature. They are almost always just reflections of a constrained consciousness. They are quite literally just the limits of our current yardstick.
So your actionable takeaway for today is to do a hard audit of your own impossibilities. To look at your life, your career, your creative projects. How often are you standing around staring at a massive goal waiting for the perfect lever.
We all do it.
We do.
Yeah.
You tell yourself, if I just had more budget, if I just had the right software, if the timing was physically perfect, then I could move this mountain. This text is begging you to stop waiting for impossible physical conditions. Become the true sage. Stop scrubbing the monitor, shift your thinking, rewrite the code of your own mind, and create the condition for success internally first.
Reclaim your agency from the material world.
Exactly. I want to leave you with the essay's incredible, playful final line. The author writes, "Hey, my friend, if you have nothing else to do, try lifting the earth for fun. It's quite entertaining."
It is the perfect encapsulation of holographic thinking. And it leaves us with one final, deeply provocative concept to wrestle with before we go. We spent a lot of time today discussing how consciousness creates reality and how physical limitations and illnesses might just be external manifestations of an imperfect internal structure.
Right.
If we genuinely entertain that idea, what is the Elysium world in your own life? What is that place of boundless joy, health, and unrestricted potential that you are currently locking yourself out of simply because you hold a stubborn, rigid belief that you don't possess the physical key?
Wow. Stop trying to measure the Milky Way with a grain of sand. Throw away the yardstick, find your own fulcrum, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.